Today, I'm pleased to welcome Rachel Geyer to the podcast. Rachel is a Bitcoin advocate working with Terahash Space and for an orange future for her children. She also does a lot more. Welcome to the Bitcoin Edge, Rachel.
Thank you, Paula, and thank you very much for inviting me on the show.
Well, it's great to see you. And before we dive into Bitcoin, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, where you're living now, and a little bit of your background.
So I was born and raised in the UK, in the United Kingdom. And after university, I moved over to Germany and I worked for a couple of years teaching at German universities. And then my then boyfriend, who then became my husband, came home and said he's been asked to be moved to China. Am I interested in going? And we thought, well, that would be a good opportunity to start having children because I wasn't able to work. And then started quarter of a century odyssey of living abroad, working for German companies for four years or so, and then moving back to Germany. Then we moved to the Middle East, and then we moved back to Germany. So we've had China, the Middle East, Africa, and produced 4 children along the way. So was very busy. And then in 2017, I was first introduced to Bitcoin by my son. We were living in South Africa, and he came over to visit us, and he just said, "Mum, you need to have a look at Bitcoin." And I was busy at the time, as you always were, as you always are, with the youngest children still doing their schooling. And I just was setting up a company for expats in Joburg. And so I said to him, well, buy a little bit for my husband and for me, and buy a little bit for each of the children for Christmas. And that's what he did. So we gave the children a few Satoshis for Christmas and said they just have to keep it for a year and then they can decide what they want to do with it. And of course, we bought it in 2017 when it was at the peak of $17,000. Straight after Christmas, it dropped down to about $3,000. And so the children thought, well, this is a rubbish Christmas present. I think it was a little bit embarrassing for that son. And I didn't really give it much thought. And that son, he kept going and going and going in the family chat, posting all the time, posting really long podcasts. And I'd say, look, Patrick, no one's got time for that. And then I actually banished the topic from the family chat and said, we'll open a new chat. We'll open a chat called Bitcoin Banter. And then the family members can opt in. If they're interested in knowing about Bitcoin, they can opt in. So that's what we did. And he kept posting and kept posting. And then the pandemic hit in 2020, and we had to unexpectedly leave Africa, leaving jobs behind, came back to Germany and had time on my hands because of the pandemic. And started to read and 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 watched podcasts. And then I think for me, the light bulb moment was reading Check Your Financial Privilege by Alex Gladstein, because we've lived in so many different countries around the world. I have seen how people live in other countries. And you always think, why does nothing work over here? And then when I read that book and I thought, oh my gosh, it's because the system is designed that way, or the system it produces that. And it was such an aha moment. And I thought, I have to work for Bitcoin. It's the best thing that I've ever heard of. And it's what my children need for a secure future. And so there I was thinking, well, what can I do in Bitcoin? Because I'm not a programmer or what can I do? So I looked on LinkedIn to see what jobs there were available with Bitcoin. And the only thing they had was software engineers or social media, and I hate social media. I did get a Twitter account just to learn about Bitcoin, but I really hate social media. But I thought, well, I'm going to apply for an unpaid internship at a mining company so that I could learn more about mining and understand more about the energy question of Bitcoin. And so I did a 3-month unpaid internship at a mining company doing hosted mining in Georgia. And then went around to every conference that I could and met as many people as I could. And I noticed at the conferences how few women there were and thought, well, this is weird because actually Bitcoin is made for women. Women are busy. They've got lots going on in their lives. They've got their children, they've got their work, they've got their parents, they've got everything going on. And then you don't want to come home at night and think, well, how do I save my hard-earned cash? Here we have something that I can just put my hard-earned cash to the side and save it for a rainy day. And so then I thought, well, I'm going to see if I did a conference just for women, whether more women would come. And I asked them, there were a few women at that conference I was at, and I asked them, would they be interested? And they went, yes, that would be brilliant. But at the same conference, I also met Chris, and Chris was just setting up a platform that he was going to call Terahash. And he asked me if I was interested in coming onto his platform as a speaker. And I've learned with Bitcoin, just say yes to everything because you never know where the journey's going to go. And 3 days later, that turned into a full-time job with Terahash. It's actually Terahash Energy Company. We knew that we were going to be involved in energy, and we carry out research into renewable energy and Bitcoin mining, trying to bring Bitcoin mining to Europe. But I still wanted to do this I said to Chris, I'll come and work, but it's really important to me to get more women into it. So with a group of women, I set up Les Femmes Oranges, which means the orange women in French. And I don't know if you can see behind me, there's a picture of this woman coming down the stairs. That was a picture. She's called La Femme Orange, so the orange woman, and she's got her Bitcoin bag under her arm, and then there's all the bankers down at the bottom handing up their dollars and yen, and she's going, no, I've got my Bitcoin. And we put on our first conference then, January 2 years ago, and in the end we decided we wouldn't say no men, because there are some men who also might like a more gentle introduction, but we said, if you're a man, you have to bring a woman, so that the dynamic stayed that you had the majority women, and we got 70% women coming along.
Wow.
And we've been putting an event on twice a year, getting loads of women. But even more importantly than that, we're building it up completely decentralized, so that meetups start happening wherever you live, just start a meetup. You don't have to know much about Bitcoin. So we've got loads of them all over Germany, and we've got now one in Stockholm, and we've got one in Tel Aviv. Then they've just started something called Women in Bitcoin in London, which is based. I met all of those in Prague and Madeira, and they really liked it, and they wanted to start something similar up in the UK. So they've just had their first meeting in London. I went over to that. It's growing, and we've got a German platform and an English-speaking platform. And I think we've got over 500 people, and it's growing rapidly because when women understand Bitcoin, they're passionate about it, and they're very good networkers. And I believe that women are going to be the ones who bring about the adoption of Bitcoin, because we'll make Bitcoin acceptable to society where it's been a bit more difficult so far, and we know that we need to make the apps more user-friendly. And so I see now the women playing a big role in I think the guys have done a fantastic job. If you look at the list of core developers, it's 98% men. They've done a fantastic job inventing this new technology, or discovering this new technology, or however you want to say it. And now it's time for women to step up and do their bit.
Wow, I think that's absolutely fascinating. And I didn't know about this big women's movement. So I'm so happy to hear. Tell us a little bit about this more gentle approach.
So if you want to get a woman to understand Bitcoin, and I obviously speak in generalizations. We're all on a bell curve, and we've all got masculine and feminine in us. But on the whole, if you're going to generalize, women are interested in people and men are interested in things. And so if you come along to the women and you tell stories and you stand on the stage and you say, sorry, why is Bitcoin important to me? And why is it important to my children? And why is it important to society? You see, and these will be women who've maybe had their husbands going on and on and on for years, and they're going, can you shut up about your new hardware wallet or whatever it is? And then you just see them go, oh, that's what it's for. It's a good thing for society. And that's who we are. We're the ones who create this nurturing society. We want the best for our children, and we want a sustainable future. And, we've had on several occasions that men have bought tickets for their wives and said, please, can you send her back with laser eyes? We always send them back with laser eyes. So we don't put so much on the stage. There's a lot more time for people to chat and exchange stories, and we do workshops where you really show them, how do I set up a hardware wallet? Like, you do it and I'll help you. You don't need to do it off a YouTube video. We'll help you. And how do you buy it? We'll show you. And they want to know, how do I use it? So, you set up a Lightning wallet for them, and then they're flashing Satoshis around, and I can use it. Well, if I can use it, I'm happy. It's like I'll drive my car, but I don't understand how the car works, or I'll pay with a credit card, but I don't understand how it works. And then I can see, I can pay with Lightning, but I don't know how it works, but it doesn't matter. So we just need to teach them the rules to keep them safe, the basic rules, so that they understand what they're doing. But it's not rocket science. And we take a more gentle approach, that you don't frighten them at the beginning with, if you don't hold your own keys, you're going to, no. Step by step, study it, understand what it is. If you want to buy a little bit and leave it on the exchange, do that. It's better than having none. And when you feel comfortable with that, and you want to move on to the next step, and you could imagine maybe keeping some of it on your, keeping the keys yourself, well, we can show you how to do that. But when you're ready, and it just, otherwise, all this fear mongering of it's not helpful.
I like that approach. That makes a lot of sense. Mining and the company you work for, mining is not so much a woman's subject.
True, but I'm surprised actually how many women are working. I meet a lot of women working in Bitcoin mining, because of course it doesn't matter what your business is, you need the feminine and the masculine in the workplace, because we all have our role to play. I'm considered the mother of the company, and that is absolutely my role. I make sure that the team, you've obviously got all your different people around, and I make sure everyone's got what they need, and I'm the one who reaches out to the partners, and we're a very collaborative, cooperative company working with, in fact, our motto is unleash the power of the Bitcoin network, because we realize that if we all work together, and Bitcoin mining is hard. It's hard. It's this global business which is adapt or die. It's absolutely cutthroat, hard-nosed. And so we realized pretty early on, so when we started up 2 years ago, we noticed that everyone was only interested in energy when they contacted us. Nobody in Europe is interested in Bitcoin as a money, because to all intents and purposes, we have a fully functioning financial system. Bitcoiners know that it's not functioning very well, but most people don't know that it's not functioning very well. And if you don't know you've got a problem, you're not looking for a solution. But what we do have in Europe is a problem with energy. Our energy prices went through the roof. And actually, this is the reason why our company was founded, because the founder of the company, Chris, he is the owner in the third generation of a whole group of companies, your typical made in Germany company, producing car parts, producing cosmetics, producing spraying technology, plastic spraying technology. And his electricity bill was going through the roof, and it was becoming impossible to stay competitive on the global market. So he was looking to ways to reduce his electricity bill. He came across Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining. He understood it very quickly, and then thought, well, I've got solar on the roof. I don't need all of the solar that I produce for my production. So let me put a couple of miners, the computers. I like to call them computers because I think miners can be a little bit misleading for they're literally just computers. So let me put some of these computers down in the cellar, which their only job is to mine Bitcoin. But they mine Bitcoin and they produce heat. So we take the heat, we put it into our boiler, which we need for producing our cosmetics. So you've got this nice circular economy, as it were. And then the thinking was, well, if we need it for our company, how many other companies are there who are faced with the same problem and are looking to become more energy independent? And thus Terahash was born. And so when we opened the doors, we started off with these 3 pillars. It was going to be energy, education, and events. And it became very obvious that energy was what everybody was after, solutions for energy. And so we very much focus on that. And we hold workshops in companies. And we're the most exciting project we've got going on at the moment is on the 1st of November, we're going live in Finland, where we've got a mine of 1 megawatt where we're mining Bitcoin, and the heat from the miners is heating 12,000 homes in Finland. It's beautiful. So,
wow.
and we hope to be doing lots more of those projects.
Wow, that's wonderful. So what your company does is help other businesses use Bitcoin mining to bring down their own energy costs.
That's one of the things. So we provide managed mining. So if people want to invest in mining, but they want to do it with a German company, if I'm really honest, mining is a cowboy business, and it was a cowboy business from the first. And there's many dodgy characters in it, as we have learned at expense. It's very difficult to know who to trust, because They set up their mines. Let's say they set it up in Paraguay, and this is a case in point that happened to us recently. We had lots of computers running in Paraguay, and then the next minute the government comes along and shuts it all down. We've even had a case where we were negotiating with a company in Paraguay, and they were showing us around because we go and do our due diligence, and so they were showing us around, and we were having a look at it, and it all seemed all very good. And then when we came back to Germany, went over to Vienna, and we were talking to someone about the project and showed them pictures, and they said, but that's my mining facility. And so whoever it was passing it off as their mining facility. It wasn't even their mining facility. And so what we want to do, we want to bring mining to Europe. And because the cost of electricity is more expensive in Europe, we're going to have to be much more efficient and much more innovative to do it. So we are going to, for example, you need to have a second stream of income, because if you're paying more for your electricity, if you want to stay competitive on the global scale, when you're competing with Saudi Arabia with 2 cents for a kilowatt, we're going to have to be much more efficient. So you need to use the heat, or you need to be stabilizing the grid, or you need to be mitigating methane, or you need to be maybe getting CO2 certificates, or some other form of income that you can compensate for the fact that you're paying more for your electricity. And so this is what we're busy doing research on. How can we make economically viable use cases for Bitcoin mining? And it's difficult because, particularly where we are in Europe, there's not that much sunshine. And so, no, not enough sunshine. And it's very simple mathematics. The longer your miners are running, the more economically efficient they are. So you want them to be running as much as possible. And if you have to switch them off, that's fine if somebody's compensating you to switch it off. But if you want to be competing globally, you really need your miners to be running as much as possible, or you need to be receiving some other form of compensation to turn them off. And so what we're having to work on is solutions. If it's solar, you have to do it in combination with battery storage, so that you can, the excess solar goes into your battery so that you can be running your miners for longer. And so we're at the start of this very interesting journey, doing pilot projects, doing a lot of work with agriculture. It's very interesting in agriculture because, farmers on the whole, they've got a lot of space, and they've got the possibility to put a lot of solar there. They often need heat. They need it in there for their animals. They need it for drying processes. And so we're discovering every week more and more potential use cases for Bitcoin mining. So it's very exciting times.
Well, good. I'm glad you're excited about mining. But just to bring in the woman's perspective, mining is good in the way that, like you mentioned, it's heating homes for many people. And I know in Africa, it's bringing electricity where many don't have, right? So that's another good sign that would appeal to women. It's actually bringing down energy costs in the long term and going to improve many people's lives.
The narrative that has gone around the world, which is very misleading, is that the use of electricity is a bad thing. The use of electricity is necessary to be a prosperous first world country. And there's a direct correlation between the amount of electricity or energy you use and how prosperous your country is. So if you want to use less electricity, you will over time become a less prosperous country. So it's not how much electricity you use, which is the problem. It's the source of the electricity. You want to make sure that the electricity that you're using is sustainably sourced. And this doesn't work efficiently when it's governments telling you to do this. This works efficiently when market forces are saying this is the best thing to do. Because let's face it, I mean, you've got the sun up there, you've got abundant solar energy. It makes absolute sense that we should be harnessing the sun. And if we want to really get into it, I don't know if you happen to know that I live in Germany, where we have an energy crisis, particularly after we had the gas pipelines, turned off from Russia. And then we switched our last 3 nuclear power stations off for ideological reasons, which you think, why ever would you do that at a time when energy is scarce? And the paradoxical thing is that we now actually import nuclear energy from our neighbour France or from other neighbours around. So it's ridiculous, but that's what ideology does for you. But let's say we've got all this untapped energy from the sun, So it does make sense that you want to, that's going to be cheaper. If the governments are not subsidizing the extraction of coal or gas, then it's likely that your most efficient energy forms are going to be your renewables that you get for free. So so that's what we're working on. And I think it's also important to us. Mining, I see as this problem with mining is it's becoming quite centralized. So you have these big mining farms over in America where you've got thousands and thousands of machines, and you only have a few pools. So what happens with mining is you don't mine on your own because the probability of you mining is quite low, and so the risk is high. So it's a bit like sharing a lottery, the chances of winning a lottery. You pool your resources. And there's not so many pools. And so all the miners around the world, there's three main pools. One of them's located in China, one's in America. Can't remember where the other one is. But it's quite consolidated. And so it's good. What we're trying to do is decentralize mining, that you don't have massive farms, but you'll have in a factory, like, for example, in our factory where we use the mining for cosmetics, we've got 6 miners running, that's all. I mean, in Finland, we've got 120 miners, so 120 computers to heat 12,000 homes. You don't need much. We've got another factory in the east of Germany where we make car parts, and we had a lot of space there, so we could put 1.6 megawatts of solar power, and we've got a whole container of computers mining Bitcoin there because we, on purpose, built twice as much solar as we needed, which shows, we were economically incentivized to build more renewable energy, knowing that what we're not using for our production over there, we can use for Bitcoin mining.
Well, that's wonderful to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I wanted to talk about one of your posts on X. You wrote, "Slowly, then suddenly, we transition to a Bitcoin standard. Humanity will transition to a higher consciousness. Only sovereign individual will survive, adapt, or die." That's part of it. So, what makes you so sure of that?
I have gone on a long journey in the last 2 years, and it's probably fair to say I've done a 180-degree turn. So I'm a very social person. And not that I've really voted much in elections because we've always moved around the world, but I would say that I tended to be more, if I was going to place myself on a political spectrum, I would have probably placed myself left of centre regarding social. And the more I go down this Bitcoin rabbit hole, and the more I think about how the world works, I believe that what the social state has caused is a dependence on government and a move away from people helping people. So, for an example, if you're living in a high-rise flat in the city and you hear the baby screaming next door, you'll ring I don't know what that's called in English, like the health and safety, but whatever it is that looks after, and say, oh, there's something going on next door. Well, in the olden days, you'd have knocked on the door and you'd have said, is there anything I can do to help? Sounds like there's a problem. So we don't address each other's problems anymore. You get this third-party anonymous party in. And I have mostly lived in villages, and I love living in villages because you still see the old world. So, I've got a bit of an odd situation at the moment. I live in my old family house, but all my children have left home, and I'm filling my house with all odds and sods. I've got this chap from Gambia who's a refugee, but now he is able to work in Germany. I actually live with a colleague, and I think that this is the way that society should be. That I will help you in your moments of need, and you will help me in my moments of need, and you are responsible for yourself. And nobody is coming to help you. And I think we need to learn that. We're lulled into this false sense of, if I pay in my pension over years and years, I'm going to get some pension out until the day that I die. No, you're not. No, you're not. And I think this is one of the things that hits the women quickest. And what I'm interested to find is that the more women of my age, and I'm 54, more women my age understand Bitcoin than younger women, because we know we're heading towards retirement. We've maybe taken time off to bring up our children. You have a look at what your pension's going to be, and you think, "Oh my goodness, that I'm not going to survive on that." I mean, my pension is €320 or something a month. I have brought up 4 children. I have given the biggest gift to society, but it's not been valued at all. And I'm not going to get a pension when I get older. And nobody's going to get a pension, because whatever pension, I mean, you said you come from Zimbabwe. Well, when we were over in Zimbabwe, you walk along the street and you're kicking the $1 trillion bills that are lying on the floor. This is what is going to happen eventually to every single fiat currency. So you might be thinking that I'm going to get, I don't know, €2,000 pension. Well, it's not going to be able to buy you anything. You might be able to get a loaf of bread with it. And so in the end, I think that you need to look after yourself, you need to look after your family, and you need to look after your neighbours. And if we all did that, this would actually be a really nice world to live in.
And you think that Bitcoin is that world, because Bitcoin promotes self-sovereignty, Bitcoin is an honest system, whereas what we're living in now, we don't know exactly what's going on. We don't know how much is being printed. Bitcoin is a much better world.
So Bitcoin is a measure of energy. That's all it is. It's a reflection of energy. And so I think that society will then have to take a good, long, hard look at itself and say, what really is important to us and what do we really need to be a healthy, sustainable society? And my thesis is a little bit that feminism has gone horribly wrong because we were fighting the wrong battle. I absolutely agree that women need to be financially independent. I think it wasn't right that women are financially dependent on the male. But what feminism was trying to achieve was women being equal to men. And I think they were missing the point. What we should be trying to achieve is that feminine characteristics are equally important and valuable as masculine characteristics. And so women tend to be your more nurturing, caring. So if you look at the nurturing, caring professions, you're nursing, you're teaching, you're whatever, they're all paid rubbish. And if you look at your engineering and your mathematics and you're predominantly male, they're paid brilliantly. But we need both to be a sustainable. And I was always really pleased to be bringing up my children. I knew at university, I remember saying at university and the final day when the professor was going around and saying, what do you want out of life? And I said, well, I want to be a mum. And they laughed and they said, well, what have you gone to university for if you want to be a mum? And I said, well, I want to be an educated mum. And so while I was bringing up the children, it was quite common, and also from other women, that you'd get the comments, don't you work? And you go, I've never worked harder in my life. I know what it is to work full time, but I have never worked harder in my life than trying to bring up all these children. And society just doesn't value it. You're made to feel that it's not a full-time job. It's a full-time job bringing up children. It doesn't matter whether you're doing it, your husband's doing it, or you're putting them in a creche. It's a full-time job. And if society stops having children, which is what's happening, when I look at my children's generation, they're not having children. And those who are having children, and this sounds really harsh, Paula, but I'm going to say it as it is, who's having the children in our society? It's not necessarily the ones who are going to be the most innovative, intelligent. I was talking to a farmer friend of mine, and he said, every farmer knows you choose the best cow in the barn to produce the offspring. You walk round and you look who's pushing prams and you think, oh my goodness gracious me, what does this mean for society in the future? On the whole, educated women are not having children anymore. And so what is our future generation going to be? And why are educated women not having children anymore? Because you're put at a massive financial disadvantage if you have children. And you're looked down upon, quite frankly. And what I want to elevate, I'm always very proud whenever I'm on stage with anything, or, the people introduce me, and I always say to them, please, can you introduce me first as a mother? And they usually take it off. And I will say, no. My most important role in my life, and the one I'm most proud of, and the one that I'll be doing till the day I die, is mother. And then you can have all the other presidents they don't matter. They don't matter as much as have I brought up the next generation? But I mean, I was very, very lucky because my husband and I were living abroad a lot of the time, and he was earning well and he was very supportive, and I was able to be a stay-at-home mum. But it doesn't put me in a particularly strong financial position, you know. I mean, I happen to be lucky because he was fantastic and he saw this as I did, that this is a team effort. But you see many examples of that not being the case. And so what I think is going to happen is that Satoshis are going to flow towards those products and services being produced by society that society really needs. First, what they need, and then what do they want? And obviously, the next generation is a big one. So I think what Bitcoin is going to be able to do, I think that this whole yin yang is out of balance. Women don't know how to be women. Women think that if they want to be successful in the business world, they have to act like men. They dress like men. They put their elbows out, and it actually, I think it makes us ill because it's not our character. So you're behaving in a way, you know, you're not allowed to show emotions. If you show emotion, well, we are more emotional, and it's good that we're more emotional, and we're being forced to be something that we're not in order to be successful. And what I find with Les Femmes Orange is that the men love coming to Les Femmes Orange, where there's this more feminine vibe, where we're not competing with each other, we're collaborating with each other. So I think the world would be a nicer place if there's a bit more of the feminine brought in. So that's what I'm really hopeful for Bitcoin.
Yeah, that really sounds like you're right onto something there. It does come back to, if you fix the money, you fix the world.
Yeah.
Even though you said Bitcoin is just energy, but we are now using a better form of money.
Money is the foundation of society. So everything is built upon that foundation, and if you're built, it's like a house. If you build a house on a wobbly foundation, you're not going to have a strong house. And so if you're building your society on a very, very solid foundation, you're going to have a far healthier society. And what I'm finding, the other thing that I really love with Bitcoin is value for value really does happen because we're all sitting in the same boat. And the beauty of Bitcoin is if you have Bitcoin and I have Bitcoin and you do something which is good for Bitcoin, I benefit too. And if I do something that's good for Bitcoin, you benefit too. So the Les Femmes Orange, this is not a company, it's not an association, it's a movement. And I put a lot of my time and energy into that and a lot of money because I go to as many of the meetups as I can and I like to support if they're doing new things. And then you think, gosh, that's costing me a load of money. But the more women that come into Bitcoin, the higher the adoption of Bitcoin and the more my stack is worth. So I am getting value for what I'm doing. So no Satoshis are actually changing hands, but they don't need to change hands because the boat is rising, taking us all with it.
And you mentioned that during these meetups and during your conventions that you do teach people how to transact with Bitcoin and also hodl. Do you think we're still in the hodl phase or we're beyond that?
The more we use Bitcoin and really use it, the quicker the adoption will be. So I pay anything I can in Bitcoin. So I will opt to try and find a restaurant that will accept Bitcoin. For a while, I was living in a flat where I could pay my rent in Bitcoin. I get paid my rent in Bitcoin in a flat that I own, because I believe that the more we encourage merchants to accept Bitcoin, the faster the adoption will be. But of course, I don't want to spend all of my stack of Bitcoin. So you spend in Bitcoin and then you convert the euros that you would have spent into Bitcoin. If we use it also to make the apps better, the more I use the Lightning app, the more the developers know what works, what doesn't work. So I think usually what happens is you start hodling, that's great. And if that's the stage you're at, that's fantastic. And then you might want to try out the next stage. You might want to look into Lightning and see how does it work if I want to pay people in Lightning. And then your ultimate, and then you know that you're on the Bitcoin standard, is you earn in Bitcoin. That needs to be your goal. I don't want to go back. I don't care how many pieces of toilet paper I can have for my Bitcoin. I know what piece of this 21 million pie I've got, and I know that that can't change. In fact, it can only get bigger because people can only lose their Bitcoin. So whatever proportion I've got, it can't get smaller unless I spend it, but it can get bigger if other people lose their keys. That's such a lovely, secure feeling for preparing for the future. My husband and I, when we were living in Africa, and that was before we knew Bitcoin, and we were looking at our finances and thinking, when can we retire? Well, I think we're going to need to do 5 more years, and then the pandemic hit, and then inflation shot through the roof. And then you think, well, I can't retire. You can't plan for the future at all with euros, because you don't know, is 1 million going to be enough to tide you over for 20 years, or is it not? It would have been 10 years ago, but it won't today. But I know that my stack of Bitcoin, unless Bitcoin breaks, and there's a very, very minute chance that Bitcoin can break, but there's always a chance, I feel very, very safe and secure knowing that I've got this pad behind me. No, you're not going to need much Bitcoin. I mean, it's pure mathematics. There's 21 million Bitcoin, and then there's 8 billion people in the world. It's about 250,000 Satoshi per person if you were going to equally share it, which obviously isn't going to happen. But if it were, you'd be 250,000 Satoshi per person. That would be a lot of money one day. So you don't, and this is the other thing that we say with the women, you don't need to be. There's another woman in Munich who I really respect. She's got this program that's called 1 million Satoshi. Just try to get to 1 million Satoshi. I remember at the time it was 250 euros. Maybe it's 350 euros now. I don't know. But it's a sum of money that's achievable. Don't buy that coffee to go. Just put the 5 euros aside, and then when you've got enough aside, get a bit of Bitcoin. And I think it's very reassuring to know you don't need to have a Bitcoin. Nobody's going to be having a Bitcoin, but just get a little piece of the pie.
Yeah, just in case what all these smart people, you included, are saying is true. It's like a little bit of insurance on our system. But in order to get people to that point is quite a hard stretch. Unless look how many times it took for your son, right, to post in the chat before you looked into it.
I'll be eternally grateful, or seriously. And I think everybody should be eternally grateful to the person who orange pilled them. And I know it cost him a lot. Because if you're the only one in the family who's fighting against the family and everyone's saying, my gosh, please, it's exhausting. Because then I became the second evangelical, and I've learned my lesson. I've really learnt my lesson. Don't try and missionary. Don't try and persuade anybody. When they're ready, they come to you. And then it's like knife through warm butter. When they're ready, you can tell by the questions they ask. Do they ask open-end questions? Are they just trying to prove that you're wrong? You can tell on the way they pose their questions. Are they genuinely trying to understand what this might be, or are they trying to show you that you're thick?
Yeah, so are all your children on board now?
No.
Okay, we got some work to do.
It doesn't matter in the end, because in fact, one of my dearest friends, it was causing such a strain to our relationship. I just couldn't leave it, because I know she hasn't got much money, and it's actually the people with not much money who really need to be getting Bitcoin. But I can understand that if you haven't got money to spare, you think it's an enormous risk. And so in the end, I thought, you know what? I'm just going to buy the Bitcoin. And I said to her, I'm going to put this much money into Bitcoin, and you can buy it off me until 2030 for the same amount of money. And by 2030, it's going to be worth shed loads of money. And that meant I could relax, because I knew she's going to be okay. That helped. And in the end, the best way to orange pill people is to live a good life. And so you live the life that you want to live. I'm not stressed. I don't care whether I have a job or not. I love working, and I do want to work, but it doesn't really matter to me. And I can, if I want to take extra time and I want to go and spend it with my children, I can do that. I'm very, very relaxed about that. And people see this and they go, well, why aren't you worried about? And then you can, then it's a natural that you explain about it, and your actions always speak louder than your words. So are you enjoying life? That doesn't mean that you're out, spending a lot, but do you get joy out of your life? Are you content? Are you fulfilled? Are you optimistic for the future? Why are you optimistic for the future? If you're like this, people pick it up and go, "Oh, that's weird. Everyone else is walking around with a face like a damp March day, and why is she so cheerful?" And that's your best. That's your best advertisement.
Yeah, I really like that. I've been trying to orange pill my family, and my brother lives in Zimbabwe. I live in Miami, but he lives in Zimbabwe and he does well there, but he never has any extra to put in to Bitcoin. He doesn't fight Bitcoin. He sees it, but he says, "Yeah, I don't have any extra money."
But it's
And I'm
quite
in,
interesting. It's interesting
yes, it
because you
is.
thought he would
It's a
know
choice.
because he's had currency crashes. You'd think he would understand fiat
Yes,
currency.
but it's more of a I'm spending all of my money on keeping the family going and living the lifestyle. Whereas when I got to Bitcoin and started learning, I think about now what I'm going to spend on. Do I really need to fix this or buy this? It could be better put into Bitcoin.
Yeah,
But I am
it's a bit.
interviewing Seb Bunny this
Oh
week,
yeah.
and yeah, I really like his book. But because he's a mountain biker, my brother said, "Okay, I'll listen to that one." So you just never know where people will get.
This is it, Paula. 100%. You need to have somebody on the stage or talking or in the podcast on the video who I identify with. And if I listen to someone, I go, "Oh," I mean, I think this is why I'm so successful at orange pilling women, because they listen to me and they go, "Oh, well, she's just like me. All she cares about, or the most precious thing in her life, are her children." And I'm not the world's best technological, I can more or less use my computer and I can more or less use my phone, but don't ask me to program stuff. But if I'm confident enough to do it, then it gives them the confidence to go, well, if she can do it, I can do it. What we also need at the moment, we need more young people on stages. We've got a lot of older men. Yeah, we've got a lot of young men and we've got a lot of older men. We've got some older women. We could do with some teenagers so that the teenagers are picking up on it. So we also, Terahash is a founding member of the European Bitcoin Energy Association, and I sit on the board of that. And actually, I put it together, and I know nothing about politics, and I'm not a fan of politics. But I do understand that if you want politicians to listen to you, you have to speak their language. You must speak the language of the person that is on the opposite side of the table. So it took me a long time to put the board together of the European Bitcoin Energy Association because I wanted exactly the right people sitting around the board. And so there's one guy on there who worked on the European Green New Deal for 10 years. So he's a climate, well, he's a scientist, climate investment fund now, but he speaks the language of the European Green New Deal. The other guy on the board has worked for 30 years at the European level on energy regulation. Then we've got someone who's working on the MICA regulation from the largest German exchange for digital assets. So you don't put a bunch of Bitcoiners on the table. I mean, they're all Bitcoiners. They all understand what it is. And then, of course, we've got a few mining companies. Terahash is there, a company called Prosperity Digital, who are all doing these wonderful projects of stabilizing the grid and all the other beneficial things that build out of renewables so that you can show on the website, show, don't tell. This is what Bitcoin mining can bring for the energy transformation that we hope to achieve and that's a target that's been set by the EU. So if you go along and say, okay, we want to help you to reach your targets, and so we're working very hard on it's a lot of work goes on behind the scenes. We're very low key. But that's how politics works. It's the meetings behind the closed doors. And that's where we're very lucky with Terahash because we've got an energy lab and we invite the politicians, we invite the media, and they walk in there and they go, oh, well, it's just computers. Yes, that's all it is. It's a data center, but it's not loud and it's not noisy. No, it's not. And look, here it's cold water going in and here it's warm water going out. And you see the light bulb go off. Oh, and then you've got a completely different discussion afterwards because they've understood what it is. If I say the word Bitcoin mining, the image that comes into people's head is dirty digging, environmentally unfriendly mining, which is why you should really avoid the word mining. It's just a data center. It's just a data center. So it was very unfortunate that we started calling it mining, because that hasn't helped the narrative. But the narrative is changing anyway. I mean, KPMG has brought out a very good report now about the benefits. Roland Berger has. There's so many peer-reviewed studies coming out, not by Bitcoiners. We don't want the stuff by Bitcoiners because nobody believes the Bitcoiners. We want those fiat companies that everybody think produce good work. If they're starting to say how beneficial Bitcoin mining is, and we're presenting that on our website, then you just need to show them, look, this is what it can do.
Yeah, that's such a good point. So we're coming to the end. Tell me how Bitcoin has changed you.
I think my values are still the same. I don't think it's changed my values, but what it's changed is how I look on the world. And it's more this sovereign individual. That's what it's changed for me, that I have come to the conclusion I have to be responsible for myself, and I have to be responsible for my family, and I have to be responsible for my neighbours. That's the only way. The more I get involved in any of this, everywhere I look, government intervention, even if it does have good intentions, has negative consequences. And no one can centrally plan anything. I mean, look, I find it hard enough to know what's the best for my family. So how does somebody want to tell me they know what's the best for the town? How does somebody want to tell me they know what's the best for the country? How does someone want to tell me they know what's the best for the World Economic Forum? I mean, how arrogant is that? That you think that you've got the solution for what's best with all these people. No, people don't even know what's good for themselves. So let's leave it to the individual. Stop telling me what to do. Obviously, I think we need one rule and one rule only, and that is treat people how you want to be treated. And if we all played by that rule, the world would be a better place.
I agree, absolutely. I just want to ask you about that, the government intervention, because I speak to so many men and we always talk about the money side. And I always want to ask, what about also the social issues? Do you think less intervention on the social issues? Let us decide
100%.
let me decide
Look
what's
at
best for me as long as I'm not hurting anybody else.
look at
Obviously,
the
the
photos.
abortion thing gets in the way for some people because they think you're hurting somebody else. Yeah.
Yes, but it's nobody else's right to choose how I think about something. All you need to do is look at photos of the 50s, and everybody's slim. You don't see a fat person. And then in the last 40, 50 years of a healthcare system. I mean, take the UK, you've got free healthcare, and in Europe, you pay a proportion of your salary, but everybody's got access to healthcare, and yet we're unhealthier than we've ever been. And so you've taken away people's incentives to be careful about what they eat, to be careful to have sport, because I know if anything goes wrong, the insurance company or the state is going to pay for my operation. If I had to pay for that operation, you can rest assured I'm going to do my best not to end up, needing whatever. I mean, what are all the operations? Hip replacement, knees replacement. When you see that they're obesely fat, and you can see at one glance, all you need to do is eat less or eat the better food. And so, making something free, if something is free, people don't appreciate it. And so, when the government's being sorting out the health, we've got less healthy. When the government, I mean, it was interesting. My children first went to normal German schools, but then when we were moving around the world, they went to international schools. The difference of education when it's privately given is day and night. I mean, it's really day and night. And I think this is a whole. Let's not open that one. I mean, I was in Bulgaria. And we were having a chat with Daniel Prince, with all the speakers. We were sitting in the speakers thing, and then somebody said, "Did you know that in the white paper after the World War II, the American white paper, and they're talking about the education system, they actually mention the word docile. They want to create docile citizens." And this is what we talk about: animal rights, that you mustn't keep chicken cooped up in a coop, yeah? What do we do with our children? We put them in a school at 8 o'clock in the morning. We let them out at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And for boys, it's a disaster because boys need to be out and climbing trees and grazing their knees. We sit them down. We give them drugs to make them quiet because that suits the adults. It doesn't suit the children. And we decide what gets put into their brains, and it's not what they need to learn. I mean, you need to be teaching your children just how to think. Everything should be teach them how to think for themselves, and you're not going to get that at school. So the whole educate needs rethinking.
That's a whole nother a whole nother rabbit hole. Yeah. Well, our chickens actually are still cooped up, most of them, and our food system is not good. And as you're pointing out, the education. That's why many Bitcoiners are starting to self-educate their children.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
take my hat off to that. I
I know.
honestly do. Boy, I don't know how you. Whoa,
I
I really
brought that
can't.
up to them. I said, I don't think everybody can self-educate. And they said, well, you don't have to do it all yourself. You can just or you don't have to do any yourself, but you could choose smaller classrooms or things like
Yeah.
that. Or,
Yeah, and I mean the thing with homeschooling, you're not actually doing the schooling. You get an online system, and I have to say, all the children that I've met who are homeschooled, they're wonderful. They're wonderful. You can tell, you've finished your schooling in 2 hours, and then you've got the rest of the time to. I mean, when children naturally want to learn, we don't need to tell children what they need to be learning. You just need to, you give them the opportunities and watch where they go and what interests them, and they learn all the time. I mean, the son who introduced me to Bitcoin, everything he knows and does well, he's taught himself. He didn't learn it at school.
yeah. And then you're more likely to do what you love anyway, rather than doing what you think you should do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well,
Awesome.
that's wonderful. So just what does freedom mean to you?
I think freedom is extremely important to me. I am a free bird. I live all around the world. I don't like being cooped up. I think it stops when it starts impeaching on someone else. I want to be the kind of person that a neighbor wants to live next to. Yeah. So, I mean, you've always got to look around the people and how does my behavior affect the people around and is that fair? But I want to be the one who decides over me, over my body, and over my family, because I know that I have got the best interests of my family at heart. And obviously, there's going to be a couple of exceptions. You do get a couple of exceptions. Life is hard, nature's hard. But on the whole, the parents are the ones who've got the best interest, long-term interest in the children than any government organization or school. Or so let us all make our own decisions.
I love that. And treat others as you would like to be treated. That's a way to live. So thank you so much for joining me today, Rachel. Where can people find you?
I am on Twitter. That's my one concession, Gaia_Rachel. I'm on LinkedIn. We have a website for Les Femmes Oranges, lesfemmesoranges.work. EBEA is EBEA.work for the European Bitcoin Energy Association. And my company is Terahash.space. So if you Google, in the meantime, quite a lot comes up if you Google.
Well, thank you so much. This was very interesting.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I enjoyed chatting with you, Paula.